Hey guys, I wanted to share with you a devotional today, and something that I was thinking about is a few years ago, I had the privilege of going to Haiti on a missions trip, and it was truly a life-changing trip. It was amazing. And one thing I remember specifically about that trip was when we flew from the airport out of, I believe it was Fort Lauderdale. We flew into Port-au-Prince, Haiti. When we got into Port-au-Prince, we actually had to take a private plane from Port-au-Prince to Jeremy, Haiti, which is where we were doing the mission work at. And I can remember this little plane was a crazy looking plane, if I could almost say it. It was one of those planes where you could see the wooden floor below you, and the seats were just like a normal folding chair with a little seat belt. It just didn't really make you feel all that safe. And I can remember getting on this plane thinking to myself, God, you are in control. You know, we're doing your work. Keep us safe, because I surely didn't feel safe in this plane. Anyway, so the weather wasn't necessarily the best weather for flying at that moment. But we all loaded up into the plane, everybody that was going on this trip, and we started to fly out of Port-au-Prince to go into Jeremy. And when we were, weather kind of got bad. The turbulence got crazy. This little plane was literally just flapping all around. Everybody started to panic. Anyway, needless to say, the pilot that was flying the plane, he didn't even have to go over the intercom. He could literally just kind of look back and say, hey guys, weather's too bad. We got to turn around, go back into Port-au-Prince. So we did, and we ended up having to take a 15-passenger van from Port-au-Prince to Jeremy. Now, to us here, traveling from point A to point B can be a little easy because we travel on roads. But at that point, traveling from Port-au-Prince to Jeremy, I think what would have took us maybe a 30-minute flight, if even shorter than that, took us almost, I believe, 3 hours in this 15-passenger van, because there's no roads there. You know, you're going up mountain areas and hills and rocky parts. It was just a trip to remember. Anyway, the mission trip happened. It was phenomenal. Like I said, it was life-changing. And all of a sudden, it came time to end the trip. So guess what? We had to get back on this plane now from Jeremy, where we were doing the mission trip, and fly back to Port-au-Prince to get on the commercial airline to fly back home. And weather was beautiful that day. And so anyway, we get our crew together and we start to fly, we get on the plane, this plane that we initially got on. And I can remember having the same thoughts. Wow, this is scary. Even the littlest bit of wind would shake the plane like you wouldn't believe. It would, you could hear and feel every jar or nook or move that the plane created from the weather. And so I can remember getting on, and I can remember a lot of people in our team for this mission trip looking around on this plane, and they started to panic a little bit. They started to allow fear to set in, just like me, because you were kind of holding on. God, just please get us to Port-au-Prince safely. And I can remember there was one individual there on our flight with us, and she was just beside herself on this plane. She was panicking. I believe tears were kind of streaming down her face. I mean, she was really fearful that we were about to lose our life. Even though the weather was good, it was just the type of flight that we were taking. And I can remember the gentleman that was sitting next to her. He said, "Sweetheart, why are you so scared?" And she said, "Because I just don't feel safe. I just don't feel at peace. This is a crazy flight." And she said, "You're not scared? This wind doesn't bother you? The turbulence, this crazy way that we're feeling doesn't make you afraid?" And he said, No, it doesn't. And she said, well, why not? And he said, well, because I know the pilot. And he knows he's in control. He wouldn't fly us in crazy conditions. He wouldn't take us and allow us to take this flight if he knew it was going to harm us or put us in an unsafe environment. He knows what he's doing. He flies this plane all the time. We're going to be okay. Some of us hearing that kind of settled down. And I started to think, man, isn't that how life is? As long as you and me, as long as we know the pilot, we'll be all right. We can rest in the fact that if our pilot, our God, our Heavenly Father, our Daddy, as long as He's flying our plane, we're going to be just fine. In life, we might experience from time to time a little bit of turbulence. But as long as He's flying the plane, as long as He's the pilot, we're going to be just fine. In Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, it says this, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your heart. Let me say that again. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. I'm here to tell you today that our Jesus, He is the Prince of Peace, and His peace passes our understanding. Two things I want to ask you. Number one, is He your pilot? If He's not, will you make Him your pilot? And number two, if Jesus, if He is your pilot, if He is your pilot, will you trust Him? Put your faith into Him. Trust and thank Him for the peace that is already in you and me. He's our pilot. Let's enjoy the flight. God bless you all.